Arsenal finished as the best team in the Champions League in the group stage. We had two massive upsets as Juventus and Inter got bounced out in the round of 32. And so many storylines are still yet to be played out as we enter the round of 16. I wanted to go over the stories of all the teams left in the 25-26 Champions League as we enter the round of 16 and what it could potentially mean for them to get their hands on the trophy. Of course, the Champions League has its favorites, and not every single team that's left is going to be considered a team that realistically has a chance to win the Champions League. But if football has ever taught us anything, it's to never count anyone out. In my opinion, there's not really a team out there that's by far and away the best team out there that's just gonna steamroll everybody. So let's let everyone dream, huh? But let's get into these teams, their journey, and what it would mean for them. And I want to start off at least with the teams that had to qualify through the round of 32, which first takes us to Newcastle. They enter the round of 16 on very shaky form. In the month of February, their record is just about positive as they have 5 wins and 4 losses. They managed to beat a terrible Spurs side, an Aston Villa side that had been in a slump for a while now. Their round of 32 opponent's quarterback, who never really stood a chance, did manage a good win against United. So for the most part, they managed to beat up on some pretty bad teams. But against good teams, they've crumbled. 2 losses to Man City, a loss to Brentford, and a loss to Everton. It also hasn't helped the guys like Livramento, Bruno Guimaraes, Lewis Miley, and Fabian Schär have all been out on injury. For Newcastle, they're typically a side that tends to struggle in Europe. They've only actually managed 5 appearances in the competition, with their best run being in the 2002-2003 season when they got to the second group stage phase. Of course, with the format of the competition being different now, at the moment they're kind of in their best run ever. So what's set to be a very entertaining tie against Barcelona stands in their way to make their already best run even better. This side is going to need their defense to really step it up. They can score goals a good bit on their day, but struggle so much to keep clean sheets. With opponents getting better and better, this is something that they'll need to get addressed ASAP. Given that this would be Newcastle's first ever Champions League and that this would guarantee them Champions League football for next season no matter what happens in the Prem, winning the Champions League for Newcastle could potentially elevate their status as a club into that higher tier that they've been chasing since Shearer was around. Next up on the list, let's take a look at PSG. The reigning champions this season don't look as impenetrable as they were last year. Although interestingly enough, they were in a pretty similar position last year. Last season at this stage of the Champions League, PSG had been pretty disappointing. They finished 15th in the group stage, only just about avoiding automatic elimination in the last 2 match weeks. Then they demolished West in the round of 32, which kicked off their insane run that led to them winning it all. This season, PSG didn't have to scrape their way into the round of 32, but kind of just meandered in the mid-table area through the league phase. But this time not showing that spark of improvement. They don't hold the ball as well, they don't press as aggressively, and they aren't as disciplined in the back. Granted though, this season has also seen PSG struggle with injuries. Notably, the current Ballon d'Or holder Dembélé has regressed a bit this year as injuries have kept him out a fair bit, with other key guys in the squad like Fabian Ruiz and João Neves also seeing some time out. Round of 32 this year won't be the catalyst to start an insane run for PSG as they managed to get past Monaco but not entirely convincingly, and now they have Chelsea to go through in the round of 16. This side first needs to stay healthy and secondly need to get that midfield back to the form that we know they can show. That's gonna have to be the key for them because that engine room needs to be firing on all cylinders for Enrique's system to really work. But next on the list is Atletico Madrid. Atleti are hitting good form at the right time. Despite losing to Rayo 3-0 and nearly throwing away the 4-0 lead that they had in the Copa del Rey, the month of February alone has seen Atletico score 3+ goals in 5 of their 9 games, while also keeping 3 clean sheets. Although you wouldn't expect the Cholo Simeone side to be scoring goals like this, Sorloth, Julian Alvarez, Griezmann, and new arrival Lookman have all been stepping up big time and have been scoring for fun. And this is going to be the major key for them to go forward in this tournament. We know that they can defend for their lives, but if they can't score when games get tight, then they'll keep on being that team that just can't get over the line. Losses in the 2016 and 2014 final, a loss in the semis in 2017, and they haven't gotten past the quarterfinal since, with their lack of goal scoring threat in those ties being one of the major reasons. Given their side of the bracket, there's a great chance for them to sneak in there and really make the most of their luck to potentially win it all. The Champions League for Atleti would vindicate all they've been through with El Cholo and could set them up to remain competitive even after he's no longer manager. Next up on the list is going to be Galatasaray, which is arguably one of the most difficult teams to play at their home stadium. The Turkish club this season in the Champions League managed to snag 20th place in the league phase, which saw them go up against Juve in the round of 32, a match where they were considered the underdog. Luckily for them, the first leg would be in Turkey and they would absolutely smack Juventus 5-2, setting them up nicely for the second leg, where despite Juventus giving it their all and nearly coming back, they managed to get past them, looking unstoppable at home but pretty weak away, a major theme for them in the Champions League this season. In the Turkish league, Galatasaray is first place, showing that this is no pushover team. They have arguably one of the best strikers in the world with Osimhen, and if he can get firing with the home fans behind them, Galatasaray have a chance to sneak past a team or two, which at this stage is all they really need. They are on the harder side of the bracket, but they have already beaten Liverpool, who was their round of 16 opponent earlier this season, which will give them a psychological advantage. A tall task, but if Galatasaray win their first ever Champions League, this would go down as a historical dark horse run that would be massive for Turkish football in the future. Next on the list is everybody's favorite Norwegian team, Bodo Glimt. Bodo is by far the biggest underdog left in the Champions League, and it's not even close. Reason being is that the club is from Bodo, Norway, which you can see is an incredibly remote part of the country that is home to just 42,831 people. For reference, the Wanda Metropolitano, where they beat Atletico early in the season, had an attendance of 58,910 people on the day, more than the population of this city. This Norwegian side just barely made it to the round of 32, as they would finish 23rd in the league phase thanks to a 3-1 victory against City on the penultimate match day, and then that 2-1 victory over Atletico on the final match day. When they were matched against last year's finalist Inter Milan, everyone assumed that this would be the end of the road for the Norwegian side. That was until Bodo ended up turning into prime PSG and slapped Inter Milan 3-1 at home and 2-1 in the second leg to progress to the round of 16. Look, Bodo is against the odds and is by far the biggest underdog, like I said, but there's a chance. The round of 16 season facing off against Sporting, which on paper was the best case scenario. From there, their matchups get way harder, but time will tell. A big factor for this club is the fact that their home stadium is incredibly difficult to play in because of the fact that it is damn near in the Arctic Circle. It'll be key that Bodo gets started off well and continue to make most of their home matches in these games. If they can get early leads and if Peter Hogg can continue that exceptional form that he's in, then their Norwegian side will be dreaming. Champions League for Bodo, their first, would be like when Leicester won the Premier League, a true fairy tale that would probably surpass Porto winning it in 2004. So from the biggest underdog to the most successful club in this competition, this takes us now to Real Madrid, who might be the team that is entering the round of 16 with the worst form and the worst squad luck. They just lost Mbappe to an injury, and since I wrote this script, Rodrigo actually has torn his ACL, so he's out for the rest of the season.
Valeu.
Pegar pouquinho aqui.
And these are just two guys that are added to a list of major players they have out. They also just lost back-to-back league games to Osasuna and Getafe in matches that were not flukes at all, where Madrid just looked pitiful. They had a major manager crisis where Xabi Alonso couldn't wrangle the squad to play good football, and now Arbeloa is drowning in the role as well. If they have anything going for them, it's the fact that they have the momentum of having gotten the very satisfying victory over Benfica in the round of 32 after the whole incident with Vinny Jr. Madrid are against City in the round of 16 for what feels like the 78th time in the last 10 years, but they'll have to hope that maybe City come into these matches with more of a focus on the Premier League. With Vinny Jr. out there, he's always capable of producing magic on a Champions League night, but the center backs, whoever they put out there, need to come into these games composed and ready to give it their all. Securing a Champions League for Madrid would be vital this year. Firstly, it would put them even further clear of everyone else, as they'd then be on 16. Secondly, it would be a huge beacon of hope. These last two seasons have been pitiful, so winning the Champions League would remind everyone of their top dog status and financially make up for the lack of silverware over the last two seasons. So next up, let's take a look at Atalanta. The Italian side managed to pull off a phenomenal comeback against Dortmund in the round of 32 that included what honestly might be the best penalty of all time. I mean, seriously, just look at where he scored this penalty. Atalanta are very far removed from the Gasperini side that took Italian football by storm and won the Europa League 2 years ago. Now under manager Rafael Palladino, Atalanta has been an okay side both in the Champions League and in Italy. In Serie A, they are 7th place, 22 points off of first place. And in the Champions League, they finished 15th in the league phase, very middle of the pack all around. When things go well for Atalanta, they have a core of players who link cohesively like Pasalic, Darun, Scamacca, Ederson, and Charles de Catelier. It's just that these players aren't always showcasing their best every single time they're on the pitch. Up against Bayern in the round of 16, on the death side of the bracket, Atalanta have a mountain to climb. But if they manage to win their first ever Champions League, they would more than likely catapult themselves into the upper echelon of Italian football. Now from one underdog to another, let's take a look at Bayer Leverkusen. Leverkusen, coming off the Xabi Alonso era, started off this season with Ten Hag as a manager as they looked to start a rebuild. His project would only last 62 days, which led to a lot of instability for the German side. Similar to Atalanta, actually, they are a long ways away from that side that took football by storm 2 years ago. From having been on top of the world, they're kind of just settling back in mediocrity. This year, they're 6th place in the Bundesliga, 23 points off the top, and in the Champions League, they finished in 16th in the league phase. Having easily but boringly gotten past Olympiacos in the round of 32, now they have the mighty Arsenal in front of them. The thing is though, they kind of have a chance. Bayer Leverkusen could take advantage of a couple things on Arsenal's end that that I'll get into a little bit in their section, but nonetheless things that could generate hope for Bayern. With the first leg being played in Germany, they'll have to really lock in and try get a moment of magic against an imperfect Arsenal. Similar to Bodo, a first ever Champions League for Bayern would feel like a Cinderella story because of how average their season has been and how much they've fallen off over just 2 seasons. But similar to Atalanta securing a Champions League, this would catapult them into those top conversations within German football. So that's more or less it for the teams that had to go through the round of 32. Now let's take a look at the teams that automatically qualified. So now let's take a look at Barcelona, last year's semi-finalists that realistically should have been in the final. Overall, they've had a pretty good season this year, but just not as great as last year's because of Flick's tactics being a lot easier to play against. Something that was showcased in their tie against Atletico Madrid in the Copa del Rey, where they lost 4-0 in the first leg, which more or less just put the tie away then and there. But despite their drawbacks, they're still a very good team. They're currently top of La Liga and looking like they're gonna win it all, and finished 5th place in the Champions League stage. And now they have a Newcastle side that everyone expects them to beat. For Barca, they're gonna need to hope that Yamal really turns it up. He needs to remain the focal point of this team and pull off what he did last year. Clutch moments, insane performances. They also need to stay healthy. Barca have had a lot of injuries throughout this season and even last season, and if they can take a bigger lead in La Liga, this would help them a lot with the rotation. Flick also needs to not be so stubborn when it comes to tactics when either the team is down or when they have a lot of injuries. But if Barcelona managed to win their first Champions League in 11 years, it would be a massive achievement, especially if it was ushered in by Yamal. And coinciding this with Real Madrid's struggles would also be a massive statement. Next up we have Chelsea, who besides Madrid are also probably entering this stage with the worst form. The Club World Cup champions came into the season with some decent to good expectations that have all just been unraveling as the season goes on. Tons of injuries, sacking the manager, still being unsure if the current manager is good enough, signing Garnacho, lots of down points for them this season. But despite all this, they've been good in the Champions League, even beating Barcelona 3-0 earlier this season. They're going to need to hope that João Pedro, Cole Palmer, and the midfield pairing of Enzo and Caicedo continue to showcase the elite talent and not hide away in big moments. The round of 16 for them is a rematch of the Club World Cup final, so if they've beaten PSG before, they can definitely beat them again. Chelsea is a team that always does big things when least expected. Their Champions League title would put them level with United and could turn things around for them domestically. They might also miss out on top 4 in the Premier League, so securing Champions League football would be massive for them. Alright, so we have to talk about Tottenham Hotspur because they're here, but how are they here? How? Somebody please tell me in the comments. And I'm not gonna lie, them being here is kind of a stain on pedigree of football at the moment. They are deadass 16th in the Premier League and are in consideration to get relegated, yet finished 4th in the Champions League. To be fair, they did have a fairly easy run of games, but Dortmund and Frankfurt should be ashamed of themselves. I know we have other underdogs in here that I've talked about, but this Spurs side is probably the worst team left. Alas though, we're here now, and now they have an Atletico team in front of them. Any chance Spurs has needs to lie in the hope that that Premier League form does not carry over to the Champions League from here onward, because things are looking grim for them there. Heads are down, players are downing their tools, it's not looking good. But if they can forget about that when the Champions League anthem starts to play, maybe they have a chance. They need to playoff vibes and just hope that key guys can return from injury when it matters the most. If Spurs manage to win their first ever Champions League after securing their Europa League last season, 1, that would be hilarious, and 2, would genuinely force some crazy conversations, because Spurs winning the Champions League before Arsenal, where would that leave football? But this would guarantee them Champions League football for next year and would be amazing for revenue. From one English club to another though, that takes us to Liverpool. They started off this season incredibly, dropped in form drastically, find themselves kinda picking it up recently, despite even that 2-1 loss to Wolves. The round of 16 is a 2-legged rematch with Galatasaray, who did beat them earlier this season, which like I mentioned will give Galatasaray that mental advantage. They do tend to show up on European nights, they do tend to ride good form, and recently they've been a very hard team to break down. Again, barring that game against Wolves. They just kinda need to keep this up for the rest of the tournament. And a big factor is also going to be hoping that Ekitike can continue his scoring form, because Salah has fallen off a cliff, but if Ekitike can keep picking up where Salah left off last season, then they have a chance. A 7th Champions League for them would see them tie Milan and put them in a position to potentially overtake them. Given their struggles in the Premier League, a Champions League victory would guarantee them a Champions League spot next year, which would give them an opportunity to bounce back from this poor season. Keeping it in England one more time, that now takes us to Man City. City, like a few of the other clubs on this list, have had a very up and down season. In the Champions League, they only just about managed to lock in automatic qualification to the round of 16 as they finished in 8th place. The big reason for that being that they lost 2-0 to Bayer Leverkusen and 3-1 to Bodo Glimt within the last 4 match days. In the Premier League, City has also been struggling to keep pace with Arsenal and really look like they're about to let the league title slip. This kind of feels like Pep Guardiola's last dance, and for him to win the Champions League, this team's gonna need to really lock in. They do have Madrid in the round of 16, which does give them an opportunity to progress. If they can get rolling and that second half of the season Guardiola momentum kicks in, then there's a chance for them to progress far in this competition. The second Champions League for them would help them a ton, although at the same time, not a lot of people care about Man City's success anyways. Alright, so probably the last underdog on the list is going to be Sporting. Sporting managed to lock in 7th place in the league phase on the final day by beating Bilbao, having beaten PSG the week before. Given how their team was stripped of Amorim and Gyökeres, they've done incredibly well to be in this position. This season for them, Luis Suarez, not that one, has stepped up massively for Sporting as he's registered 22 goals this season so far, with 4 of those coming in the Champions League. Their bright attack is going to need to get firing as quickly as possible. When they can, they need to try and take the front foot rather than invite pressure. As good as Gonzalo Nacio and the Amonde are, this team isn't built to continuously absorb pressure. They're going to break eventually. A first ever Champions League for Sporting would put them level with their Portuguese rivals Porto. Like that 2004 Porto side, this would be a massive miracle that would keep Sporting a little bit more competitive in Europe as time goes on. Next up we have Bayern, who are one of the biggest anomalies in European football. They're always just so close, always feel so dominant, but always just end up coming up short for one reason or another. This season though, like I said, there isn't a team that's significantly better than everyone else, so they could take it all. Bundesliga is all but wrapped up, so they can pretty much put all their full attention to the Champions League. And as usual, Bayern enter this part of the season tearing through their German competition. Bayern's gonna need to get Kane firing ASAP. He's already having an incredible season, but he tends to go missing in big games. If these big moments arrive and Kane goes missing again, then Bayern Munich might be in trouble. Besides their attack though, they need to avoid making just dumb silly mistakes. It feels like every year there's just a game, second leg maybe, where Bayern are so close that they just start making mistake after mistake and invite the other team to pretty much just take advantage of that. If they could avoid this, and if they can get Kane firing, they have a chance to secure the Champions League again for the second time this decade. And similar to Liverpool, if they win the Champions League this year, this would put them level with Milan, again also being in a better position to overtake them. And this takes us to the final team, which is Arsenal. Arsenal are first place in the Premier League, they finished first place in the league phase in the Champions League, and yet are probably still not respected by many people in the footballing space. It's very weird. They're an incredibly good team, but they're also an incredibly mid team at the same time, which again goes to show this is anybody's season. Defensively, they've been amazing. Gabriel and Saliba, when they're on the pitch together and healthy, are very hard to get past, but they can't score goals. That's their biggest issue. Saka, Gyökeres, Eze, Martinelli, Trossard, Odegaard, they're all prone to just dropping stinkers and going missing when they need them the most. Arsenal, to really make a dent in this competition and finally win some European silverware, are gonna need to hope that their attack actually get firing consistently. It's all good being defensive, but if you can't score goals when it matters the most, things won't be looking good. But if Arsenal managed to win their first ever Champions League, this would force people to respect them. It would be just one, yes, I understand that, but nonetheless, they would finally get over the line. They wouldn't have to hear the song Champions of Europe, you'll never sing that. Well, who do you think's gonna win the Champions League? You can let me know in the comments down below. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter because next year when United's back in the Champions League, we're just gonna win it all.